Hey guys, welcome back. Dougal Sutherland here again for session 4, Mind That Child. Hey, if you've managed to make it through to session 4, well done, congratulate yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back. But you know, it's an awesome opportunity, and I congratulate you if you've even done one of these, right? It shows that you've been able to take some time out to stop and reflect on your own parenting, and that's what we want you to do. Is to be able to stop and reflect and think, can I do anything differently? So, last session we talked about, we've got a particular focus on middle childhood, and we talked about the importance of emotional regulation, both you and your kids, and we talked about the importance of relationships, establishing those relationships. We talked about the ABCs, attachment before consequences. And hopefully you might have done some homework around that. Remember, if you don't do anything different, or if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. Yeah? So if you want to get some different results with your kids in your life, you will have to do something. It's no good just wishing. Oh, I wish I was a better parent. I think I'm going to do something different. Yeah, cool. I wish you were too. Have you done anything? Nah. Got a bit busy. Well, okay. Fair enough. It all happens to all of us. But if you don't do anything, you won't get anything. Change your behaviour is the key thing. Okay, so remember, this is not about being a perfect parent. It's about being good enough. Good enough parents produce good enough kids. And in this 4th session, we want to talk about the ABCs of managing behaviour, part 2. So in this session, we're going to talk a little bit more about the nitty-gritty kind of actual techniques that you might need to use, or just some ideas to guide the use of these techniques for when, often when your kids have done something wrong. It comes back to ABCs. So this is ABC Mark 2. ABCs, antecedents, behaviours, consequences. I'll explain each of those words, although you probably know what a behaviour is, right? Now, the principles for these, the rules are applicable equally to a 4-year-old, to an 8-year-old, to a 15-year-old. So, you might go, well, I don't have a 7-year-old, right? Can I use the ABCs? You can use, the ABCs are about human behaviours. As adults, we respond to the ABCs. So, these work regardless of the age. So let's start with antecedents. That's a flash word, and really it's an unnecessarily technical word, but it works really well for ABC. Antecedents are really about what was happening before the behaviour. So let's say you're really worried about the fact that your child has a tantrum, or throws things, or has sworn, or punches their brother in the face. Antecedents means what was happening just before that. Now, that involves us stopping and being able to look past the behaviour. Now, this might take a little bit of practice to do, but why do you think they're doing it? Be careful not to think of them as small adults. Don't attribute adult intentions to a child. Oh, well, I think he was doing it because he was really mad and jealous at somebody and he wanted to get back at them. Oh, I don't know if kids think that complicated. That sounds like an adult speaking. So, what was going on just before it? Maybe it was because they punched their brother in the face because their brother had been needling them all day, and finally it got too much and they said something really hurtful, or they pinched him under the table, or they broke a favourite toy. Ugh, bam! Often, if you can figure this out, you might not need to do anything else, or much else at least. Now, got to say, you still need to deal with that behaviour. It's still not okay to punch your brother in the face, but it might help you stay in control and figure out the appropriate consequence if you've figured out what's happened to get there in the first place. Sometimes that involves a bit of detective work. Sometimes you might not be able to do that in the moment. You might have to sort of clear everybody out, send them to their corners, and then figure it all out. So, what's happening before? If you can change in the future what's happening before, you might not get more of that behaviour that you're worried about. If your child regularly has tantrums, I can remember a child of mine who shall remain nameless, a male child, he's about 19, goes to Equippers College. He used to, when he first went to school, he used to get really, we'd pick him up from school and he'd be really grumpy, almost have a tantrum in the car. We figured out he was actually really hungry. So, what did we do? To be fair, when I say we figured it out, my wife figured it out and she said, he's really hungry. I said, oh, okay. So what did we do? We used to bring some afternoon tea in the car when we picked him up, and the first thing we did was give him something to eat. And he stopped being hangry in the car. He had something to eat. His body sugars were out of balance, and he just was and it made it go away. So sometimes it's about looking at those patterns of behaviour. When is this occurring? Why might it be occurring? And seeing if you can do something about that. So, antecedents, what's happening before? Behaviour, thinking about kids' behaviour. We often know what we want less of, right? Don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. We often know what we want less of, but what do you want more of? If you don't want them to do that, what do you want them to do instead of? Hope that makes sense. You know, don't run round. What's the example we've got there? Stop being silly, stop running around and sit on the floor. That's what you want them to do, rather than saying, stop being silly. Remember, they're always going to do something, so tell them what you want them to do. If they're swearing, 10-year-old swearing, probably learnt them from their mother. That's the case for my kids anyway. Sure, say, I don't want you to swear, but how do you want them to express themselves when they're angry? They might not have the words for it. They might have learned the words that you use. I'm sure you've all got stories about that, right? So, yeah, really important to say what you don't want them to do, but be clear in telling them what you do want them to do instead of, because they're always going to do something. Remember, more of the behaviour that you want leaves much less of the room for the behaviour that you don't want. So rather than trying to stop a behaviour, it's probably better to build up more of the behaviour that you want to see more of, if that makes sense. If you want your kids to play nicely together, and I don't know quite what that means, but you might have to figure that out. It's much better to get them to do more of that, to play cooperatively, to share toys, than just saying, don't fight, don't argue. Does that make sense? We function like that as adults, right? We're much better if somebody tells us what to do. Oh, do it like this. Oh, okay. Not just don't do that. Think about your own job. If your boss just said, don't do that. Okay, what do I do instead? I'm not telling you. Okay, I'll just work it out. So, yes, tell them the limits, tell them the rules, don't do that, and tell them what you want them to do. Be specific about the behaviour that you want to see. ABCs, the C, consequences. Now, this is deceptively simple. Consequences are about rewards and punishments. Now, I want to define those two, because immediately when I say rewards and punishments, I'm sure immediately things pop into each of your heads. A reward, buying them a toy; punishment, smacking them. Just pause that a minute, just suspend that judgment. A reward is something that happens after a behaviour that makes it more likely that you'll get more of the behaviour in the future. So reward always happens after a behaviour. The goal of a reward is to get more of the behaviour. Rewards and punishments are morally neutral, and that's important. I'll explain that in a minute. A punishment, something that happens after a behaviour that makes it less likely that you'll get more of that behaviour. Okay? Now, in our heads, we've probably got this idea of what is a punishment for us. Punishments, rewards, which are both consequences, right? They come after the behaviour, and they're simply defined as, do you get more of the behaviour or do you get less of the behaviour? So you've got to think about this carefully. Because for kids, the biggest reward is attention from you. So think about this. Your 9-year-old does something terrible. Come here. You spend 5 minutes telling them off. That cost a lot of money. You shouldn't do that. What are you doing? What you're doing is you're giving them a lot of attention right then and there. Even though you're wagging your finger, even though you're speaking in a gruff voice, which is now confusing, right? Because now you're giving them a lot of attention, but emotionally it's quite negative. It's like, what do I do with this? I want the attention from you, but it's emotionally negative. It's a reward. You're more likely to get the behaviour because you're spending a lot of time giving them attention. If you want to reduce a behaviour, you want to use a punishment, but you want to keep that short and sweet. Use your attention, and you can see here why it's really important to have a good connection and relationship with your kids, right? So time out, for example, is a punishment. What's it time out of? It's time out of the relationship with you. The punishment is kids have to go away from the relationship with you. That's the punishment. You're taking away your attention. Now, it only works if you're giving them attention in the first place, prior to that. So, I hope you're with me. I just want to go back to that because it's really important. A reward is something that happens after a behaviour. That means you get more of the behaviour. A punishment happens after the behaviour. You'll get less of the behaviour. You can only figure out if it's a reward or a punishment by whether you get more or less of the behaviour. Because I guarantee you, if you're telling off your kid like this, you don't mean it as a reward, but it might act like one. Hope that makes sense. It's a tricky thing, but once you get your head around it, it can be quite liberating because you go, oh my God, I've been doing this the whole time, and actually I think I've been rewarding them. I've been trying to explain to them, I've been sitting down and explaining to little Johnny why they shouldn't hit their brother in the face. And I thought it was a really useful thing to do. I spent about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going, I don't think that's going to help. I think you're just giving them attention. You're more likely to get that again. So it's a really it's deceptively simple. And the deception is that sometimes rewards can be punishments and vice versa. So think carefully about the rewards and punishments that you have in your house. What do you do? And think carefully about the role of your attention. When I'm giving a punishment, does it involve me giving lots of attention to my kids? Because if it does, it might not be a punishment. It might actually be a reward. So maybe pause there. And this is probably a good time to have a discussion in your groups. Think about and have a chat about the consequences that you use in your house. And are they rewarding? i.e., do they help get more of the behaviour, or are they punishing? Do they help you get less of a behaviour? If you've got a behaviour that's going on and on and on and on, God, I can't seem to get them to stop having tantrums. Something's probably rewarding that behaviour. So maybe stop, have a think, have a chat, because I think it's really good to make sure that you understand this concept because it's really crucial. So pause there and then we'll come back. Okay, so hopefully you had a little bit of a chat there about differences between rewards and punishments and how they can be deceptively sneaky and fool you into thinking one is the other. So remember, the consequences, the principles are the same. A reward happens after you get more of the behaviour. A punishment happens after you'll get less of the behaviour. The principle's the same, you just have to flex it for the age of your child. So a consequence, a punishment for a 4-year-old might be no TV. For a 9-year-old, for a 4-year-old it might be time out. That might be a punishment. For a 9-year-old it might be TV, no TV. For a 15-year-old it might be being grounded. The principle is the same, right? And consequences are more about changing future behaviour than they are about stopping the current crisis. And I think often we get ourselves tied up in fighting the war, or the battle rather, and lose sight of the whole war. Do we want to be thinking about child or parenting as a battleground? Well, it probably is sometimes, right? So let's be honest. But Consequences are about shaping future behaviour into the future. The fact that they've already done and dusted, if they've had a tantrum, if they've painted the cat, if they've smeared chocolate on the white couch, that's already happened. The punishment and the consequence is around making sure it doesn't happen again in the future. It's not about dealing to that behaviour, because that behaviour's gone. You might want them to learn a lesson, sure, absolutely. But when we're thinking about the ABCs, it's about future. Thinking about, I want to see less of this in the future, and I want to see more of this in the future. So hopefully you get that. I know it's quite a sort of technical point in a way, but it's incredibly crucial. And in my experience, I've seen parents getting these mixed up all the time, and you can get mixed up without realising it. Another one is, a classic example I'll illustrate, a kid's really badly behaved, always oppositional, always swearing, always, never doing what his parents want him to do. Parents get so annoyed with this that they tend to just sort of start to ignore him. So, is that a punishment or is that a reward? What happens is, because remember, the biggest reward for kids is their parents' attention, right? So what do? They up the ante. They start doing more of that behaviour in order to get their parents' attention. So what do the parents? I have to respond. I have to engage with them. I have to tell them off. So you're inadvertently getting more and more of the behaviour that you don't want, because that's the time when you interact with them. But then you feel so exhausted because all you do is interact with them when you're telling them off, is that you have nothing to do with them when they're behaving nicely. So that behaviour doesn't get rewarded at all. It gets punished. And you see how you can get trapped into that cycle. And I've seen this time and time again, especially with sort of disobedient, defiant behaviour, is that families just get trapped into this cycle. So think about whether that might be you. And if it is, then go back to the first ABCs from last session and spend some time just establishing that relationship before you try and get into punishing bad behaviour. Okay, a few more tips for you. I don't know if you can see it up there. We've got the Charlie Brown cartoon. Now, if you're my age, you'll remember Charlie Brown, the comic strip Peanuts in the newspaper. And I really like they did a sort of cartoon series. And my favourite was when Charlie Brown was sitting in school, which is the picture up here, and the teacher was always going, and he was just sort of thinking about everything else. And as parents, I think we're so guilty of going, and then all the kid hears is all that, and then occasionally their name, David. David. So, act, don't yak. Less is more. Make your point, follow up with a consequence, and that's it. Don't spend hours lecturing them. How you say things, how you discipline your kids is just, if not more, important than what you say. I've had my own experience in this. And that's why I put here, ask your partner or a friend how you sound when you're disciplining your kids. I can remember my wife saying to me, God, you know what? You sound really mean and nasty when you're telling off the kids. I went, I didn't mean to. And I can't hear myself. All I can hear in my head is the good intentions I've got and the great job I'm doing as a parent and teaching them this lesson. But how I'm saying it might come out as mean and nasty. It might come out as sarcastic. And remember, kids don't understand sarcasm. They just think you're being nasty. They take it literally, which is the reverse of what you want them to do. So how you say things when you're disciplining your kids is just as important as what you say. What's the tone of voice? Again, you can trace this, you can sort of put all these bits together, right? Because in order to be in control of how you say something, you need to have a bit of emotional control. And remember, back last session, we talked about the importance of your own emotional control. So that's sort of linking, dotting the dots, drawing everything together. Another top tip, find your child's currency. What is it? So thinking about consequences, remember? Punishments and rewards. Find your child's currency. I often think and if you've got more than one kid, you'll find that each kid has a different currency. It's almost like your kids are different countries, and every time you go to that country, you need to make sure you've got the right money. Now, for some kids, it will be money. For some kids, a reward is money. That's cool, but think about currency more broadly, right? For some kids, it will be a screen time might be a big currency. So the most powerful thing you've got is to say, you can have more screen time if you do this. Oh, okay. Or, no, I wouldn't want to mix rewards. Or for some kids, it'll be, we'll give you $1 every time you, I don't know, well, I was going to say every time you set the table. That's probably a bit expensive. But, 50 cents when you set the table. You're just building habits. You're wanting more of that behaviour. But it doesn't have to be money. I don't want to get really focused on money. But think about, for your kids, what are they really into? What's their big thing? If they've got a chart that they're building towards, well, I'll give you a star or a sticker. What's the thing they're building to in that sticker chart, that star chart? Is it a book? Is it to be able to go to the movies? Is it a trip to Rainbow's End? What's their currency? What's the thing that grabs them? What's the thing that motivates them? Figure out what your child's currency is. And remember, each different child will have a different currency. So just because, another way of thinking about this is different strokes for different folks. And you think about us as adults, we're like that. If I held a raffle, we're going to hold a raffle. We're going to raise $1 million squillion to do at the Mercury Theatre for Equippers Auckland. Great, okay, and the raffle prize winner is rugby tickets to see the All Blacks. You'll probably get half of the audience saying, give me 7. And another half of the audience will go, I don't want any. Well, that's not a very good reward. I'm not going to do that. Yep, so we're just the same, right? Different strokes for different folks. Figure out what your child's currency is. And hang in there. If you're trying to reduce a problem behaviour, hang in there. A rule of psychology is that behaviour usually gets worse before it gets better, which is incredibly frustrating. Let's say you've got a kid that's having tantrums. Okay, we're going to really focus in on stopping these tantrums. And I've seen lots of parents that have come back and said, it's not working. Well, we came along to you last week and you gave us all these wonderful tips, Mr. Psychologist, and it's not working. We're getting more. We're having more tantrums. And I would helpfully say, that's working. That must be working, because it shows that whatever you're doing is changing their behaviour. Now, and they're probably increasing the behaviour to get what they thought expected would happen. The principles I call the Coke machine principle. You think about if there was a Coke machine here, right? Every day, you put in I don't know how much a can of Coke is, $2? People will be laughing, $2 for a can of Coke? Anyway, you put your $2 coin in, it's $2 for the point of this example. $2 in, push the button, can of Coke. $2, push the button, can of Coke. $2, push the button. What do? I don't think many of us will go, oh well, turn around and go away, right? Bang it, kick it. Get your arm up in there, trying to get, another $2. You try again, you try again, you try again to try and get that thing that you're expecting. Eventually you might go, the thing's broken. Then you give up. Kids' behaviour is the same, right? They try to get the same response, the same response, the same response. They up, the ante. And then if you're consistent, if you hold on, then the behaviour will go away. But that's the real testing time, right? Because you think you're failing. Oh my God, it's getting worse. No, that's good, that's good. That's, in the long term, it's good. That's that short-term pain for long-term gain. So stick with it. If you're trying to reduce a behaviour, expect that it will actually get worse before it gets better. So that's a Coke machine principle. Lastly, sort of tip-wise, teachable. You often hear this concept about teachable moments. Oh yes, it's a teachable moment. I want to teach my kids about, the importance of being kind to animals. Please don't paint the cat. It's really horrible for them. But often I think we try and teach too much in the moment. You can't teach a kid when they're highly emotional, when they're angry or they're upset. When we as humans get upset, we just don't think very clearly. Okay? And so why? Because our brains get overtaken by our emotional responses. The part of the brain that's amenable to teaching is this here, the prefrontal cortex, right? So this is the human part where you think and reason and logic and decision making. So, a great example that you can relate to as an adult maybe is if, let's say you're in an argument with somebody. Let's say I'm having a discussion with Pastor Sam. Okay, and we're getting heated. I don't know what it's about, but we're disagreeing. And he says something like, "Shut up, Dougal, I don't even think you're a very good psychologist." And I go, ugh. So I'm getting really emotional, right? I'm really feeling really ashamed or really angry. And I say, "Shut up, Pastor Sam, you dick." And then I just walk away, right? And then I go away and I calm down. You've probably had this in your own life, right? And all of a sudden you go, oh, why didn't I say that? Why didn't I think of saying that at the time? Well, because you weren't thinking, right? Because your brain wasn't on. It was overflooded with emotion. Kids are exactly the same. If they are angry, if they are crying, that is not the time to teach them something. Okay? What you need to do is you need to help them. This goes back to emotional control, right? Help them to regulate their emotions. Help them to calm down. They might need a hug. Even though they've done something terrible, they might need a hug from you. They're crying, they're really upset, they're feeling guilty. Oh my God, they've shaved the cat again. Oh, what's this? This cat's going to have to go back to the vet. Or they've, broken something again. They pulled the TV off the wall, and they're really upset. This is not the time to go, rah, 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 rah. This is the time to help them regulate their emotions, to help them calm down. Might mean giving them a hug, which seems sort of the opposite of what you want to do, right? But you're trying to get them just to calm down. When they're calm, their brain switches back on again. That's the teachable moment. Doesn't mean that you don't give them a consequence. You still give them a consequence, right? Consequences will shape their future behaviour. I'm still going to give you the consequence because I don't want you to shave the cat again. 3 times is enough. Poor old Mittens is really traumatised, let alone your mother's lady shave razor. It's really ruined. So you can still give them a consequence, but you can also teach them. But they need to be calm for you to teach them. And you need to be calm, right? So again, linking it all together, the importance of controlling your emotions so that you can help them control their emotions. And I've got here empathy, which isn't the same as agreeing. Empathy is just sharing somebody's emotion, noticing what they're feeling. In a sense, you're kind of saying, I see that you're feeling upset. And you're responding to that emotion. Because what you're doing is helping them calm down. Once they're calm, then you can teach. But again, act, don't yak. So give them a consequence, give them a brief teaching moment, don't overdo it, don't overcook it, and then get on with it. And go back to having a good relationship with them. So your good relationship is always going to be the foundation. So, we've pretty much come to an end now. Over the past 4 sessions we've talked about teens. Remember, they've only got half a brain, so be kind to them. They're a very special, unique group of humans. And we've talked about middle childhood. We've talked a lot, actually, probably if you think about it, we've talked a lot about your emotions as a parent and your behaviours as a parent. We've talked about the importance of you being able to understand where they're at, about you having values that you're going to bring to your kids, about you having some understanding, about the things that how you establish a relationship with your child, about how you use consequences, whether those are rewards or punishment. And that's why we call it a parenting course, not a childing course. If we thought that teaching kids directly about changing their behaviour was useful, we would do that, but it doesn't work. You are the most important thing in your child's life. Okay? And remember, this is not about being perfect, it's about being good enough. So lift that weight off your shoulders. You're not trying to get this right all the time. So look, I really hope that you're going to take something concrete away. Do something different. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. So I want you to take away and do something different. Do some homework. Start doing these new behaviours. Choose one and do it. And important to surround yourself with good support. So you're probably watching this in an e-group with your church whānau around you. Great. Look after each other. Help each other. This is part of being in a community. We do life together, right? And this is part of doing life. So I really hope you've enjoyed what we've brought you today. We really hope that, and over the last couple of sessions, really hope that this is going to equip you in your parenting journey, and that magically your kids will pop out the other end and they'll be okay. So thanks for your time, thanks for your attention. It's been great bringing this to you, and best of luck with your journeys in parenting.
Well, hi everybody and welcome back. We're just having a brief chat with Dougal Sutherland again after hearing about the middle childhood years. So one of the things you talked about, Dougal, was the whole telling off thing.
Yep.
That we as Kiwi parents, I don't know about you, but I've spent many hours practicing my telling off voice.
Yep.
In fact, I probably was one of the highlights of raising my children.
Yep.
No, it wasn't. But it's definitely a thing that's part of our culture.
Yeah,
How do we nip it in the bud?
Yeah. Look, so a really good sort of thing to remember is low and slow.
Right.
Often when we get, angry, we yelling, blah, 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 and talk fast. We know that kids are much more responsive when you lower your voice,
Right.
and you slow your voice down.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that kind of, and you'll find that you have much less room to say things anyway. You can go off at the mouth if you're up there, but that's all just. So low and slow. Men have a natural advantage in this because often their voices are lower anyway, right? So
you're saying we screech?
Yeah, well, there's a tendency, right? So, so don't feel left out. Some guys will screech as well, right? If it's bad enough. So practice that low and slow. Now you think about that. That takes a bit of emotional control. Because your immediate response might be so you might need to model, and actually you'll find that by being low and slow you'll probably actually lower your own emotions as well.
Yeah.
So it can actually help. You don't have to necessarily wait for your emotions to be down. You can bring them down yourself by being low and slow, and I mean now, so it's just that. Yeah, so I think that's a really good, and again, you have to practice it, like all of this, right? This is not, if it's not natural for you, you just need to practice.
Yeah, so do you like, when people are relearning these sort of things, do you have mental prompts, or how do we prompt ourselves? Because as you say, we go autopilot.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Look, again, it takes, I would, as weird as it sounds, write some stuff down. We know that, and set some goals for yourself. Like over the past, 4 sessions that we've done, we've talked about heaps of different things. Now, there's no way in the world that people are going to be able to do all those different things, right? Oh, I've got a list of 25 things. Well, you're never going to do them, right?
True.
It's just impossible.
Yeah.
So pick 2 or 3 key things for you. Actually, I want to focus on low and slow when I'm disciplining my kids. I want to focus on staying in control of my emotions, and one other thing. And write them down. Tell somebody else that you're going to do them. We know that the act of, or one of the most powerful predictors of doing a new behaviour is committing to doing that new behaviour.
Right.
So if you write it down, or you tell somebody, it increases your intrinsic motivation to do that behaviour. And if you've got it written down, you might have it written down and taped to the top of your bathroom mirror or your bed, not your bathroom, because the kids will see it. The fridge, low and slow. And kids will go, what's that mean? And well, it's all right, you'll find out.
You will find out.
But have those prompts around, commit to doing it, have somebody around you that can bring some accountability. Hey, how's it going with the low and slow? Oh, God, forgotten all about it. Thank you for reminding me. So just doing all those things that are going to help build a new behaviour, a new habit. Reward yourself when you're doing it right. Rewards and punishments affect human behaviour. So if you're trying to do a new thing with your kids and it's starting to go okay, then find a reward for you. We often think we should just save them for kids. But actually, what are you going to do to say, hey, good job, mate, well done.
Yeah, have a cup of tea or a biscuit.
Whatever it is.
Half a packet of biscuits.
Half a packet of biscuits, yep.
Yeah, it could be that. That sounds cool, Dougal. Thank you so much. I know, I just quickly want to finish on this, that there will be people that are stuck in a really bad cycle of yelling and screaming at their kids, right?
Yep.
So they're trying these things, but they're just emotionally not able to, they feel like they can't quite put them in place. Where do they go? Who can they ask for help, or what can they,
look, it'll depend a little bit on the different community that they're in, but reach out. I think that's the main thing, is don't do this alone. Talk to the people around you. Ring citizens advice, Google a parenting course, but go and see your GP. Like often people forget to go and see their GPs about this sort of stuff. GPs,
know a lot,
they know a lot. They have lots of little tentacles into the community. Ask another parent, somebody that you trust. But if you're finding it a real struggle, don't feel too proud to go and get some extra help. It's tough, and if you've come from a tough past yourself, then it's really tough to overcome that. And it's okay to get some extra help with it. We don't expect you to have to do this stuff by yourself, but you know, find out what's out there in your community. Talk to the pastor of your local church. They're they're probably a great, or they can find stuff out for you. Just try and find out what's out there for it, and don't think you just have to do it alone.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for that.
Cool.
So, tēnā koe Dougal, this has been amazing. We hope that you guys have really enjoyed it. I know you have, and you've had some amazing tools and tips, things to go away with to help in your parenting and to grow great and amazing families. So God bless you. There will be, there's written material to go with all of this, and we might see you again sometime. Thank you.